Fasciola hepatica is also known as the common liver fluke or the sheep liver fluke. It is a parasitic flatworm of the class Trematoda, phylum Platyhelminthes, that infects the liver of various mammals, including humans. The disease caused by the fluke is called fasciolasis, also known as fasciolosis. Fasciola hepatica is distributed worldwide and causes great economic losses in sheep and cattle. It has been known as an important parasite of the sheep and cattle for hundreds of years. So next, let's go to the biology of the Fasciola hepatica. As I've said, it is known as the sheep liver fluke, found in liver and biliary passages of human. It is a large digenetic trematode species. So let's go to the morphology of the adult worm of Fasciola hepatica. It is averaging 13 mm in length and 13 mm in width. Fasciola hepatica is one of the largest flukes in the world. The adult worm has a very characteristic leaf shape, with the anterior end being broader than the posterior end and an anterior cone-shaped projection. The fluke possesses a powerful oral sucker at the end, the anterior cone, and a ventral sucker at the base of the cone, which allow it to attach to the lining of the biliary ducts. Each worm possesses ovaries and testes, which are highly branched and allow for individual flukes to produce eggs independently. So before we discuss about the morphology of the egg of Fasciola hepatica, let me first discuss a little history about the egg of Fasciola hepatica. It has been found in mummies, showing that human infection was occurring at least as early as Pharaonic times, or the Pharaoh. Indeed, Fasciola hepatica was the first fluke or trematode to be reported. It was first discovered, however, not in humans but in sheep, where it causes a more obvious burden. So the egg of Fasciola species are broadly ellipsoidal, are operculated, measure 140 micrometer long by 75 micrometer wide, and are passed unembryonated in feces. So I have here a comparison of Fasciola hepatica and Fasciola gigantica. So in Fasciola hepatica, it says that it has a cephalic cone, two shoulders, converging margins, smaller in size, while in Fasciola gigantica, it has a less prominent shoulders, parallel margins, larger in size. And I have here pictures and videos in Fasciola hepatica. let's go now to the life cycle of the Fasciola hepatica. So, immature eggs are discharged in the biliary ducts and pass into stool. 1. Eggs becomes unembryonated in fresh water over 2 weeks. In 2, embryonated eggs release miracidia. So what is miracidia? It is the free-swimming ciliated first larva of a digenetic trematode that seek out and penetrates a suitable snail intermediate host in which it develops into a sporocyst. So next, 3, which invade a suitable snail intermediate host. In 4, in the snail, the parasites undergo several developmental stages like sporocyst, radiae, and cercare. So, radiae is a larval form of a digenetic trematode such as a liver fluke that is produced within a sporocyst, has a mouth, pharynx, and gut, and contains cells which give rise to other radiae or a cercare. Next, we have the cercare, a usually tadpole-shaped larval trematode worm that develops in a molluscal host from a radia. So next, we have the cercare are released from the snail. So 5, and insist as a metacercare on aquatic vegetation or other substrate. Humans and other mammals become infected by ingesting metacercare contaminated vegetation. So what is metacercare? It is a tailless, encysted late larva of a digenetic trematode that is usually the form which is infective for the definitive host. So next, 6. After ingestion, the metacercare exist in the duodenum. In 7, and penetrate through the intestinal wall into the peritoneal cavity. The immature flukes then migrate through the liver parenchyma into biliary ducts, where they mature into adult flukes and produce eggs. In 8, in humans, maturation from metacercare into adult flukes usually takes about 3 to 4 months. Development of Fasciola gigantica may take somewhat longer than Fasciola hepatica. Now, let's go to the infective stage and diagnostic stage of Fasciola hepatica. In infective stage, encysted metacercare. In diagnostic stage, eggs in stool specimens. Now, let's go to the mode of transmission of Fasciola hepatica. So, ingestion of freshwater plants with metacercaria or by drinking water with floating metacercaria. Next, there is no vector in Fasciola hepatica transmission. Transmission occurs through the ingestion of raw, freshwater vegetation on which the flukes in their metacercare form are encysted. The plants become exposed to the metacercare when the body of water that the vegetation is growing in becomes contaminated by eggs in the fecal matter of an infective host. The pathogenesis and clinical manifestation. We have 2, the acute and chronic stage. So first, we have to discuss the acute phase. The acute phase of infection is rarely seen in humans, and occurs only when a large number of metacercare are ingested at once. Fever, tender hepatomegaly, and abdominal pain are the most frequent symptoms of this stage of infection. Although vomiting, diarrhea, urticaria, or hives, anemia, and may all be present. The above characteristics of the acute phase are caused by the migration of the Fasciola hepatica larvae throughout the liver parenchyma. The larvae penetrate the liver capsule and begin to produce the above symptoms 4 to 7 days after ingestion. Migration and thus the acute phase continues for 6 to 8 weeks until the larvae mature and settle in the bile ducts. Next, we have the chronic phase. The symptoms of chronic infection are much more common in human population and include biliary colic, abdominal pain, tender hepatomegaly, and jaundice. In children, severe anemia is a common result of infection and is the greatest source of disability from infection in this age group. These symptoms reflect the biliary obstruction and inflammation caused by the presence of the large adult worms and their metabolic waste in the bile ducts. Inflammation of the bile ducts eventually leads to fibrosis and a condition called pipe stem liver, a term describing the white appearance of biliary ducts after fibrosis. Next, we have the clinical diagnosis for Fasciola hepatica. In stool sample, you can see a yellow-brown eggs, and eggs don't show for 4 months. Next, we have duodenal or biliary aspirate, and antibody tests can detect 2 weeks after infection. Next, we have the ultrasound to visualize adults in biliary duct. CT scan reveals burrows in liver. Additional, for clinical diagnosis, we have fasciolasis. Fasciolasis is an infection with the liver fluke Fasciola hepatica, which is acquired by eating contaminated watercress or other water plants. It's an infection with the intestinal fluke. Next, we have the fasciolopsis buski, which is acquired by eating aquatic plants. Flukes are parasitic flatworm that infects various parts of the body, like blood vessels, gastrointestinal tract, lung, liver, depending on the species. Let's go for the treatment of Fasciola hepatica. We have triclabendazole, bithionol, peroxidic compounds. And the prevention and control, washing or cooking of vegetables, boiling of water, dietary habits, vaccination, not consuming raw plants containing metacercare. And last, we have the interesting facts about the Fasciola hepatica. It is one of the largest flukes in the world, and it is first documented in 1760 during an autopsy of a female in Berlin.